The first rule of InDesign is that everything goes in a frame. And I always threaten to make t-shirts that say this, but I'm the only one that will understand it, I suppose. So we had the shape tools as well as the pen tool to make custom shapes, but we also had the rectangle, the ellipse, and the polygon. So that is meant to hold color, stroke, or gradient on the page. And then it's referred to as an unassigned frame. The graphic frame we just saw has an X in the middle. It comes with no stroke, no fill. There's nothing there. Its whole point in life is to hold a graphic on the page. Now, if you have a graphic that's cut out, say you've got a picture of a donut, and it's cut out, you don't have a background, it's transparent in the background, you would want that graphic frame to have no color, no fill color, so that the transparency is there. So you could put words around your donut, or you can work with that transparency. You don't have to have a white box behind your image. That's not necessary. We can use any of those boxes with the X in the middle, the graphic frame tools, rectangle, ellipse, and polygon as well. And then the text frame, we use the type tool to click and drag a text frame. I'll show you the difference when they're selected. Regular frame, unassigned, has the bounding box handles around it. A graphic frame has the X in the middle to identify it. A text frame you won't be able to identify until you select it, unless there's text in it, then you know it's a text frame. Unless it's selected, then you will see these additional squares on the upper left and lower right hand sides of the selected object. So you get your bounding box handles, but you get these additional things called ports. And the ports allow the text to flow in from left to right, go down to the bottom, and flow back out the bottom right to go into another text frame. So we'll be looking at all of that in the coming weeks. I wanted you to see a little bit of what InDesign looks like when it's at its best, when it's doing everything that it's supposed to be doing. So this is a left and a right-hand page next to each other, fused together by a spine, where you're going to bind the book or magazine or whatever it happens to be. And then in the Pages panel, it's represented as page 2 and page 3. The spine is that dividing line down the middle. This is what we call facing pages. They're right next to each other. They're not individual as they are in MS Word. So we can double click on a page in the Pages panel to be taken to that page quickly. It shows up sort of in the middle of our screen. Doesn't always behave the way I want it to. Let's see if I zoom in a little bit and then double click. Takes me to that page. A single click only highlights the page. It doesn't take you there. You got to double click. If you want to fit both the left and the right-hand page in the center of the screen, try double clicking on the number under the pages rather than the page itself. Double click. And when that doesn't work, you use the keyboard shortcut or the view menu to say fit spread in window, which is Command or Control Shift 0. And it fits both the left and right hand page together on your screen. That's another keyboard shortcut that works in all of the programs, the Adobe programs. All right, well, those that have spreads. Okay, what else do we want to look at in here? There's quite a bit. Let's go back to page 3, and I'll show you some text frames here. There's a story with a big drop cap, and then it goes on to the next column. Basically, that is threaded or linked together so that when I change or add something or take something away from the first column, it's reflowing in the second column. The second column of text, you can see these little tiny, let's see if that gets bigger. Okay. This little tiny arrow that's inside of the out port on this frame is telling me that this frame is connected to the next page. There's a little tiny arrow in the in port. So as I change this, it's changing the one next to it. But as I change this, it's updating the text here. They're linked or threaded together is what we call that. We're going to learn how to do that almost right away. And we'll practice it a couple of times, a bunch of times, so that we get used to how that works. But it works very well. Okay, every bit of text here has a frame around it, even the angled stuff. All of the images that are on the page have frames around them. The frame is holding them on the page. We're going to learn how to place them, place different types of files, and then we're going to look at what we can do using the frame, the graphic frame. We can crop, we can rotate, we can scale, we can do a lot of different things just by having a graphic frame available for us. So page 2, select the sun face with the regular selection tool. Don't click on the donut in the middle. Kind of ignore that for now. Just click on some of the orange stuff you see around the outside. Okay. So once that's selected, we're going to go up to the control panel up at the top, and we'll see that we have the selection tool active. So we have object formatting options available across the top in the control panel. Well, to start, we know that there are bounding box handles around the outside of our object. Every single thing that we select, it has a frame, an object. Our frame is considered an object. We have bounding box handles. In the control panel, that very first thing you see, it looks like a Rubik's Cube. If you're from that era, you'll know what I'm talking about. A Rubik's Cube has those 9 squares showing up. This is a representation of the bounding box handles. There are actually 9. There's one in the center. We just can't see it because there's something over it. That's okay. The default for this is the upper left-hand corner. So that's where I'm going to start. But you can move that selection, and by doing that, you're eliminating the limitation. You're getting rid of the limitation of only being able to rotate around the center of something or grow from the center of something, but you're basically changing to a different reference point that you want to use as you make changes in the control panel. So I'm putting it on the upper left hand corner by clicking. This thing is actually called a reference point indicator. So if you indicate which bounding box handle you want to use as your reference point, you can then make a change using just that corner. So we're using the upper left right now. So what it's telling me next to that, the X and Y position, is where on this page from the left and from the top this bounding box handle exists. I can type something else in there. Let's say I set it at 6 inches and hit return. It's going to move the object so that that bounding box handle, that reference point, is at exactly 6 inches from the left, which is the X value. Y is the vertical axis, so it's from the top I'm going to type in 2.5 inches, hit return, and it moves so that that reference point is at that exact location. If I click on a different reference point, it's going to have a different readout. I'm just going to leave it in the upper left for now, and I'm going to do my undo, Command or Control Z, twice. Let's try something different. I'm going to go to the middle left reference point, so that bounding box handle on the left there. I'm going to go over to width and height here. I'm going to start with width. If I select one side, what this is going to do is it's going to add or subtract from the right. So it's anchoring my box right there on the left side, and it's either going to add or subtract from the right. Okay, and this, it works this way in Photoshop, definitely. I'm going to be lazy here, and I'm going to just add an amount. If you put your cursor in behind inches and you hit the plus key and then type in an amount, I'm going to type in 1/2 inch, 0.5, and hit return. It does the math for you. And it anchored right where I told it to, and it added 1/2 inch to the frame on the right side. Now undo that. Let's say I wanted to add an equal amount to either side of this frame. I'm not changing the graphics size at all. I'm just changing the frame. Okay, so the width of the frame and the height of the frame is what we're talking about. If I wanted to make this 3/4 of an inch wider, but I want it to be proportionally equal on the left and right hand side, then I'm going to select one of my middle points as my reference point. I'm going to go to my width, and I'm going to type in plus 0.75, return, and it adds an equal amount. It anchors in the center, and it adds an equal amount on both the left and right hand side. This could be a really good thing. I'll undo. And I didn't mention before when I was talking about the X, and I should do this, is when you need to line things up directly on top of each other, if you type in an X and Y value of a certain reference point, then take the next object that needs to go on in the exact same place, make sure your reference point is the same, and then type in that same measurement for X and Y. It will put it directly on top of your other object, or you could do it from the center point, whatever makes sense. But I just wanted to mention that because I think I forgot to mention it earlier. It's a good way to control where things are aligning. Okay, height I didn't do yet, but it's the same process. Pick a reference point, and then you could use the up or down arrow keys. Ooh, I have the wrong thing selected. Back to my sunshine there. You can use the up or down arrow keys. It anchors to the bottom and pushes up at the top. I could use my down arrow key, or I can do the same thing I did before. I could type in an amount, or I can use a plus or minus and return. And let me do this a bunch to fix it. Okay, back where I was. Okay, so with height, X and Y work with reference point indicator, so do the next couple of tools. We have in the toolbox, we have this free transform tool, but we also have rotate tool, scale tool, and shear tool. They're all individual in the toolbar, but we don't actually need to use any of them. We can use this control panel to do almost everything that those tools can, but we can do it in one place. So the next thing after width and height is scale. Scale means you're resizing the object. In this case, it's going to resize both the frame, the frame that's holding the graphic, and the graphic together. These two amounts are fused together. You could tell by this little link symbol, constrain proportions for scaling. It means that width and height, or X and Y value, are going to be proportionally the same. That means I could just type in one amount and it's applied to both directions. So it's a proportional change. This is very important. We keep that set up to be locked or be constrained in that way because it matters. It matters how big you make your image, but it also matters that it's a proportional change. You don't want to disproportionately change the image. It's really bad form. It's not professional, and it's very obvious to the audience. So we want to keep that proportional setting on. Let's say I pick a different reference point. I'm picking the upper right reference point. I'll make this smaller. Let's go 75% and hit return. And it makes a proportional change. It locks in on the upper right-hand corner and makes it smaller from all the other directions. So we have rotate and shear right here in the tool, or the control toolbar as well. So we have rotate first. Let's pick a different angle. Let's go to the bottom left corner. And we know with the regular selection tool, we can rotate something around its center point, but we're limited in that way. Well, using the reference point indicator in the control panel and then using the rotate tool there, we can tell it which bounding box handle to rotate around. There's a pop-out menu that you can use to, like make a quick change or get yourself started in one direction or the other. And then you could use those up and down arrows to really finesse it. If you go away and you come back to that frame, you deselect and you reselect, it's still going to have that same value, rotation value in there. When we scale, as soon as we're done scaling, it resets to 100. It doesn't keep that amount in there. All right, I'm going to put rotate back to 0. Let's see, shear. I guess I will go with the bottom middle point. The shear is weird. It takes and distorts your object, your image in two different directions. I will stick with the bottom. So it's kind of shearing it one way, but it distorts the image. And I don't really like that. But it'll do that to shapes as well. It'll do it to objects as well. And it's perfectly legal. It's not going to cause you any trouble when you're printing. And it does keep that amount in its field. If you go away and come back to that, it's still there for you to see. Okay, and then lastly, I'll just get these last couple of guys in. We have rotate 90 degrees clockwise. So you keep going like that. And I want you to watch the little P that's right here by the clockwise and counterclockwise. Watch the P, it changes. It's called the proxy P. And even when we were rotating it here, that P is doing something. It's keeping up with us. It's giving us a visual of what we've done to our image. We also have a counterclockwise 90 degrees. And we have a flip and a flop. So flip horizontal is actually flipping left to right, and flip vertical is flipping from top to bottom. One moved the image and one moved the frame. When you flip or flop, your proxy P becomes backwards and outlined, sort of like you're looking at the reverse side of it, just so you know you have that visual cue. Okay, there's a lot of other things here that we will get to in the coming weeks. I didn't want to leave you until I explained stroke and fill, just to get you going. Off to the right of page 3, I have the unassigned frame, the graphic frame, and the text frame. And there are 2 boxes towards the bottom of your toolbar that are referred to as fill and stroke. Any object, any frame can have a fill value or a stroke value or both or neither. Currently, this particular selected object has a fill of none. That's what that red line means. There's nothing in there. It's transparent. It also has a stroke of black, which I can see. Whichever of these 2 squares is in the front is the one that you are going to change. So right now, the fill value is in the front. To change a color, I have to go to the swatches panel on the right. And here we have none, paper, and black. We're going to spend a bunch of time on the swatches panel. I'm just going to click this new one. Pantone at the top, and it fills that object with the color that I selected. To change the stroke value, I have to bring the stroke to the front. In the toolbar, I'm using this one because it's the biggest one. Click on the stroke, and when you see all 4 corners of the stroke square, you know that you're about to change the stroke. And I'm just going to scroll down in my swatches panel and click on a purple color. So you can add a stroke or a fill, a value by selecting the object, making sure the fill or the stroke is forward, whichever one you want to change, and then use something in the swatches panel to apply it. Every panel in InDesign, including the control panel at the top, has this 3 or 4 lines in the upper right-hand corner. That is an option menu. I call it the panel option menu. Adobe calls it the panel menu, but it gives you additional options for your panels. And in InDesign, 80% of what you're looking for can be found in a panel option menu, and even the control panel has one.